Okay, so I want to talk about a video I made about an issue I saw with Monster Hunter Rise coming to console. And my point was that Monster Hunter World Iceborne and Base Rise are being priced the same, and I see that as an issue because you're putting both games in competition with each other. And that's not fair to Base Rise. And someone in the comments pointed out that games drop in price over time. It's not really a fair comparison. Someone else pointed out that World will be 5 years old, Iceborne will be around 3 years old, and that Rise is $40 on PC and Switch, so reducing its price for console wouldn't make sense. Which is true, but that's not even what I wanted them to do, or was implying. I don't think there's any solution to this issue, really, and I'll explain how it is I go about buying games so people have an idea of why I think this is a problem. So essentially, when I go to the store on Xbox or Steam, the main three things I look at are the graphics, content, and price of the game. Those three things are the only things that matter to me. How old the game is doesn't matter, and I have a feeling that a lot of people are the same. When looking at a game, as long as the first three things look good, it doesn't matter when it came out. Now, you still might look at when it was released after you're already interested in the game, but the fact that it's new isn't really a selling point, unless of course it's an online-focused game like an MMO, or a PvP-focused game like Call of Duty. Monster Hunter is a single-player game with co-op. Now, that might not have been the case for previous titles, given the fact that certain quests were only available online, and monsters were skilled for 4 players in certain cases. But that's not the case for World and Rise. So the age of the game doesn't matter. And so if you go to the store, and the three main things you care about are graphics, content, and price, and you look at Monster Hunter World Iceborne and Base Rise, and you see that one has better graphics and more content, and they're the same price, which are you likely to buy, as someone who knows nothing about either game? Also, I wouldn't care about this at all if Base Rise was a good game, but I think Base Rise was disappointing. The lack of a proper endgame and the lack of challenge was terrible. The price of Base Rise is actually fine. It's only a year old, it's the price you would expect it to be, and the same goes for World and Iceborne. You'd expect it to be $40 given how old they both are, which is why there's no solution. But that doesn't mean that people who see Monster Hunter Rise coming to console and become interested in Monster Hunter, who've never played it, will look at the graphics, content, and price of Monster Hunter Rise and compare it to what they can get for that same price either with Iceborne or another game. It's inevitable that that's what people will do. Now, like I said in the previous video, or I think in the description, this isn't a problem for Monster Hunter fans on console, because they've already bought and played World and just want something new, and for them, this doesn't matter, and it shouldn't. The same applies to me. I already played World and Iceborne on console, have over 1,000 hours on console. I don't care that Rise is priced the same as World and Iceborne because I've already bought and played it. Chances are, I might buy Rise on console just to play with friends and family. But it might be hard to convince them to spend $40 on a game that isn't as good as one I would recommend that also happens to be $40. Them being priced the same doesn't affect me, but I don't see how this doesn't affect other people's decisions about which game to buy. Again, for people who have not played either Rise or World at all. I'm trying to imagine convincing someone I know who knows nothing about Monster Hunter to buy Rise on console. Like, hey, there's this game coming to console, it's really fun, and I want to play it with you. It's called Monster Hunter Rise, and it's $40. It has a DLC that's going to be released sometime later for $30, and the DLC is what makes the game really good. The base game is alright, but there isn't much to it. And so maybe they go to the store after typing in Monster Hunter, and they see Rise, and they see World and Iceborne, and they say, well, what about Monster Hunter World Iceborne? I see that it's $40 too. What's going on with that? It's like, oh yeah, that's the base game and the DLC. Both are really great, the graphics are amazing, and it's super fun. But it's a lot older, but still just as good, if not better, than Rise. Well, why don't I just buy that instead? What can you say? The only thing I can think of would be, well, World is harder than Rise, so Rise might be easier to start with, which is probably the only thing you could say to convince someone to buy Rise over World and Iceborne. Maybe that's a good enough reason. I don't know, but I don't see how the question doesn't come up. And that was the point I was trying to make, is that them being priced the same will lead to conflict about which to buy. Especially for people who have not played either game. But anyways, that's everything I wanted to say, and hopefully I cleared up my thoughts.